It is the third model introduced in the 2024 Bang Brave Bravern collaboration, featuring a design based off of Knuth in the series. It is BRV02 Pleasure Lust, with a kit mostly new of Trap Push, Replay Shot, Railgun, Float Legs, and the leg ability of Pure Heart, which buffs damage when attacking a foe of the opposite gender. Now, much like it was with Bravern and Warrior Pride, Pleasure Lust most certainly does not slow down the hype when it comes to bringing in new skills that very likely could change or even boost the meta depending on how you use it. Pleasure Lust in particular inducing a lot of very interesting new interruption-based mechanics that, when used right, could absolutely reap a lot of discord and chaos along the enemy side, with a lot of minor hands in crowd control. Trap Push on the head part is a brand new healing skill being introduced into the game, and to explain it briefly, basically this serves as a new alternative to anyone trying to capitalize on Trap Buster as a leg ability, or in the rare instance, anyone that tries to use Trap Clear where applicable, which is, albeit just a little bit rarer. But to explain Trap Push briefly, essentially if there is a trap placed against you on the allied side of the field, Trap Push will take half of the charges remaining on that trap and push them onto the enemy side of the field. This means, for instance, if you are hit with a shooting trap applied to your side of the table, Trap Push will allow you to take 2 to 3 of those charges and reverse apply them to the enemy side in an Uno reverse style. If I'm going to suffer with these traps, I'm going to make sure you're suffering with me. What I do find rather interesting about this, though, is the fact that they classify this as a healing skill and not as a setup-based skill. But I suppose that still does apply it as a disruption or a cleansing-based attack or skill, so I guess this does make a little sense. Replay Shot on the right arm is a long-range shooting skill that basically induces an encore state on the target attacked. And if it does successfully induce this state on the enemy, it means that their next turn they are not allowed to choose any further action, whether it be an enemy AI or if you're attacked with it on your side of the field. Whatever your last used skill was, no matter what it is, charging Metaforce, unleashing Metaforce, using a part, or whatever the case may be, this encore state demands and forces you use that action another time. Now, it's not 100% sure if this is going to be staying as such and you have to continuously apply it, or if it's a one and done and you can apply it to multiple targets without really having to stress over reapplying. But because it is an ailment type of attack, it does mean that it can also be removed via stat cleanse or something of the like. But this replay shot can also be very useful in its encore state, such as if the enemy is charging Metaforce and you catch them on that run, well, guess what? They're essentially harmless the entire time that they're stuck with that encore state. Or if they decide to unleash a Metaforce, or if you break a part that they were going to use and encore them, it's basically going to force them into a failed state where they really can't do anything because it's forcing a specific action on them. Of course, sans any defaults that the AI is going to use as a if this then that state. Railgun on the left arm is a conventional shooting skill which basically is just the shooting version of Pile. It's an above average conventional shooting attack that gives very solid base damage and good numbers, but it also packs passive defense ignore and piercing damage, much like Pile does. So if you're looking for something with just a little more oomph than a rifle, but also without the cooldown penalties as Power Rifle or even Long Shot or Giga Gatling, Railgun might just be the particular option for you. Float Legs means that Pleasure Lust will have pretty solid coverage across all terrains at A rank across the board, and of course S rank on Cyber, but that's also not including the pretty solid leg stats that Pleasure Lust also brings to the table. But I will get to those in just a moment before I get ahead of myself. When it comes to armor, she's packing some pretty solid numbers at 3479 for the head, 3300 per arm, and 3419 for the legs, so just a little stronger than what most females tend to sit at with armor, so it's going to mean she can hold her own fairly well without getting crippled or broken too easily. With the leg stats, She's packing a passive 966 at her base mobility, which is honestly really, really good, as it means she already has a very solid base speed before any other numbers come into play. An evade of 1104 is also really nice, as it means she can dodge or graze fairly easily without anything really getting in her way. A melee resist of 1046 and a shoot resist of 1433 are both pretty solid numbers, as it means she can certainly hold her own and reduce the damage pretty efficiently without anything breaking her too quickly, especially when it comes to exchanging blows with long-range shooting attacks. And the leg ability of Pure Heart does give her a little bit more of a damage bonus when fighting anyone of the male variety of a Medarot, which is essentially about 65 or 70% of the total overall roster of any Medarot library, compared to females or even gender N, which is even rarer. All this being said though, as a pure set score, I still have to rate Pleasure Lust a pretty middle of the road 6.5 out of 10. While what she says on paper and what she does sound really, really good in theory, it's something where you have to be able to know how to juggle it effectively, otherwise it's going to be effectively useless, or you're going to mistime it and probably end up shooting yourself in the foot faster than actually stalling an enemy successfully. Trap Push is essentially only effective if the enemy does actually capitalize on using setup-based skills of trap variety, shoot trap, melee trap, head trap, whatever the case may be. If there are no traps available, Trap Push is basically there as just a blank part with no real ability to use. Replay Shot also has very solid possibility and opportunity as with its encore state, but you also have to be able to time it correctly. Because if you mistime it, or if you force them into encore state with something that is particularly powerful, you probably, like I said, already would have shot yourself in the foot accidentally, because you guaranteed they're going to be using that stronger move a second time in a row without you being able to properly prepare for it. Railgun is probably her most conventional and going to be the most widely used part on her for this very reason, especially given that it's non-heavy with pretty solid numbers at an almost 1700 base power, mid 600s for your low mid 600s for your heat and cool, and almost 1500 for your success means it's going to be a pretty solid attacking skill, especially for females, and it being non-heavy no less. And the float legs does guarantee that she really doesn't have to worry about terrains too terribly. As mixed parts though, I do have to rate her just a little bit higher at a 7 out of 10. While as a pure set, her synergy is kind of mixed and going to be very incredibly situational, being able to mix the parts up might give you just a little bit more variety. Railgun is probably something you can use very easily anywhere, especially on female teams. Trap Push will probably have its uses fairly solidly if you are able to check the team that you're fighting. Replay Shot if you are really good at juggling crowd control, but the float legs with Pure Heart and Railgun are probably going to be the two best parts on her, especially given that Pure Heart will give you a damage bonus against anyone that is a male type or even a gender N type Medarot, which I believe they said it's about an 11 to 22% damage bonus if I did read the numbers correctly, and that does add up depending on the particular part that you bring to the table.